Hi, I'm Dr. Gary Palmer of Sports Test, and this week I want to talk to you about training indoors. So, we're sat here, it's January at the moment, or it will be when I'm posting this video. The weather outside, -3 this morning, not great. That's not often the only reason that people have to train indoors. Their circumstances sometimes mean that they're training indoors because they're travelling or it's just convenient. But if you've got to do any of your sessions indoors, whether it's on the treadmill, whether you're a cyclist, so you're on the rollers or on the turbo, there's a couple of things that I really want you to think about. The most important thing is actually, are you cooling properly? Are you looking after your body and giving it the cooling air that you need? Well, why is this so important? Well, a client of mine sent me a heart rate and a power profile earlier in the week, and it rang a few bells. So all the way back to when I did my undergraduate degree in the late 80s, one of the studies that I did was we looked at the impact on exercising heart rate for a group of well-trained cyclists that were riding indoors in fairly standard temperatures, but without fans. And we compared a group of 8 riders and rode them close to a threshold heart rate, or close to a threshold power output, I should say, fixed power output, put a fan on them, rode them for 20 minutes to see what the heart rate response was. A week later we brought them back into the lab, same conditions, and we rode them without a fan. This was randomised, obviously wasn't double blinded, they knew they had a fan on or not. But the impact was, on the exercise that they weren't cooled, the heart rate was 15 beats higher than it was on the day that they were cooled. So actually the increased cardiovascular stress, the increased stress on your heart and the way that the body is working is considerably more if you're not cooling properly. Now this has major impacts because clearly if you're then having a much higher cardiovascular stress, it's going to take you longer to recover. The reason that for most cases that the heart rate is going up is your core temperature is rising, and your core temperature rises because you're generating heat as you exercise, but that heat's not dissipating properly because you're not cooling, you've not got the evaporation cooling. So you then sweat more. So of course if you sweated more, you end up being dehydrated. Or dehydrated to a greater extent if you were hydrating properly and if you were cooling properly. So again, the impact of that is it's going to take you longer to recover from your training session. So the balance here is, what are we trying to do? We're training for a reason, but the value of the training is not what we're doing in the training session, but it's how well we recover. So quite simply, by going down to your local DIY store and buying a fan or two that you can put in front of you when you train will actually have a major impact. So, you know, some guys say to me, oh yeah, but I sit in the garage with the doors open. The air doesn't move over you, you don't cool properly. Again, likewise, sitting outdoors isn't going to make a huge, great difference. You can keep a nice stable power, your heart rate will rise, that will show an increase in stress, it will show a longer time to recovery. Really what we want to see is for a same heart rate or the same power output, we want to see both of those variables constant. If you're not drinking enough, if you're not cooling effectively, your heart rate will elevate at the same power output or at the same speed on the treadmill or the same power output on the rollers or on the turbo. So it's really, really imperative that one of the things that you need to be doing is cooling properly, and if your heart rate is still rising as you're cooling, you are probably not drinking effectively. So whilst you're training indoors, the two things you need to think about are, am I in a situation I'm getting enough air moving over me to help me cool? And secondly, am I replacing enough fluid to stop my heart rate rising because I'm losing body fluid through sweating? 2 little training tips that will help you keep going through your training indoors and hopefully will make you come out a much stronger athlete at the end of it. Look forward to seeing you again for our next training tip next week. Thanks very much.